Montreal. It's fantastic, and I'm really pleased to be the finale of this film series for this year. So it's great. You will learn far more about me than what you probably ever wanted to know, so I'm not going to say very much now. Yeah, there's no silly questions, so any questions that you've been burning to ask a sex worker, then please hold those questions to the end, and I will be back and more than happy to answer them. So enjoy. Bye. So sexual surrogacy is slightly different to sex work per se. Okay, so I do work as a sexual surrogate, but that's what it's an overlapping hat to sex work. So I know that with the advent of the movie called The Sessions, which Helen Hunt was in, and I have lots of things I can share about what my opinions are about that. It certainly brought the attention to people again about the sexual rights and sexual expression for people with disability, but it's a slightly separate thing. I have presented in detail about that. If you Google my name and Saul Spister's name and similarities and differences between sex work and sexual surrogacy, you'll be able to find a presentation. So focusing, because this is primarily around the sexual rights of people with disability and the human rights, industrial rights around sex workers, there are two places in the world where sex work is decriminalised. And that is, obviously, you saw there, New South Wales, which is a state within Australia, and then all of New Zealand. Woo. Yes, New Zealand. 1995 for New South Wales and 2003 by one vote for New Zealand. Sex workers around the world are fighting for decriminalisation. Of course, it's legally recognised occupation, so that's where the difference in the terms are. So if you want more information, then have a look at some of the websites. There was pamphlets given out, so there's lots of discussion around that. So scarletalliance.org.au is the National Sex Worker Association for Australia, and there's lots of information and definitions there. Thank you for the question. Two things. Yeah, being more public, and my life has been in a way that I have been able to be more and more public, which has been fantastic. And first of all, the linguistical changes are very important. So for many years, when I was first doing media, the media in Australia would still use, whore or prostitute, and lady of the night, and all sorts of things. And a lot of us have worked very hard to work with really good journalists and say, no, in Australia, the preferred terminology is sex work and sex worker. It recognises that it's a form of labour, and we're looking at our labour rights and our human rights. So we have seen some really significant positive changes, I feel, and yeah, it's been really nice. We've had really good positive feedback all the way through, just about with Scarlet Road. In terms of decreasing violence against sex workers, once again, it comes back to decriminalisation. It is the only regulatory model in the world that removes the police from the equation. So the role of the police, right, is if any of us get hit by a drunk driver, we get our bag stolen, if we have a knife or a gun put to our head, if we have our car stolen, if someone breaks into our house, we should have the right to go to the police, okay? So, but if you are already criminalised in any possible way, and the level of violence against sex workers is perpetrated from the police in a lot of countries around the world, that is statistically proven in research around the world. They're facts. So it's very difficult if people are saying, well, if there's a crime against sex workers, we really need them to be reporting. But you've actually created the really perfect storm for sex workers to never report because we're too scared. Or if I was working illegally in this country and I was sexually assaulted, if I go to the police, I could be deported straight away. And the perpetrator of that crime would never be investigated or go through the criminal justice system, which means that they will do it again. So that's not talking to anyone. So we have found, and it's been really highly documented and researched in New Zealand. I always say to people now, Google is your friend. Like seriously, there's oodles of information out there. Start off with New Zealand, New South Wales, like I said, Scarlet Alliance, is the Australian Sex Work Association. There's national and international sex work organisations. There's fantastic sex worker organisations here in Canada. Start off with Stella and go forth. We're all linked in together online. There's heaps of information. My sarcastic answer is they pay. But, I often get asked this question, and so it's one of the top 10 questions I get asked. But it's just about, I didn't actually endeavour to seek out this kind of subsection of my client base. It just kind of evolved because I treat every client or potential client with dignity and respect. So if someone wants to inquire about me providing a range of sexual services for them, then it's about, we get to the point where I'm happy to provide certain services, they're provided to pay the amount that I'm requesting, I'm available at the time that's best for them, whether they come to me or whether I go to them, and then we work out the logistics of, so the right side of your body doesn't work, okay, well how do I adapt my service best to meet your needs? Or I negotiate a carer to be able to dress or undress someone before I arrive or showering. And I don't know, so it just kind of evolved, and touching base kind of started because we were getting lots of inquiries from parents and carers and support staff and people with disability themselves saying, how do I find sex workers that are willing to see me? And there's a lot of fear, There's the fear that all of us are, locked up in chains and that we give all our money over and, all these wild ideas about who we are. One of the biggest fears is, if we go in there and the person, say, may have cerebral palsy and is on the bed and that will steal all their CD collection or their TV. And you just think, oh my God. So it just kind of evolved that we wanted to kind of show that we were human beings and we were providing service, and at the same time, more sex workers were like, well, I have, I'm trained in certain things and my background's nursing, or, I've been seeing people with disability. How do I make myself more accessible? How can I advertise that they know where I am? So it just kind of happened in 2000 that a few of us all collided together or were friends and were working with different organisations. So, yeah, and then word of mouth, like people at first are very fearful about trust, of course, because it's very personal, and specifically if people are wanting to lose their virginity or they've had a car accident and they're wanting to relearn what their bodies will and won't do. There's, or people have a colostomy bag suddenly and they're fearful of rejection, so we're good practice run kind of thing, so they can work out what their bodies can do and can't do, and they know that we're not going to laugh at them. So it's just kind of evolved. And then some of my clients, like in the film, like they'll refer on to their friends, or I've been bought as birthday presents for different people, which is really cute, I think. Yeah, it's like, or a mum got a Christmas voucher once for her son. That was really nice. She was, yeah, and I still see him sometimes. Yeah. Some of it was out of my control because it was the editorial job. The director and I worked closely together quite a bit about different things. So there was pushing. She was learning about different things, about how things that I wanted to be portrayed and things that I didn't. I didn't want to do anything fake or set up. So I was like, I'm not having this whole film where it's like, a pretend thing. There was only one little mock thing, and that was because it was about keeping the privacy and confidentiality of lots of sex workers in a certain training thing, private. But I did get to talk a lot more with the director and the editor than what normally would happen. So normally they'd come in, they'd film whatever they want, and then they'd go away and knock it up and put it together. And then you'd see maybe the final cut, you maybe have a little bit of say, and then that's it. We had a lot more discussions and work with it together, which I really do want to commend Paradigm Pictures with all of the team together for that, because it really showed that they really wanted the voices of sex workers, and they really wanted the voice of people with disability. And I think too often people get their shots and then go away and it's their film, whereas Kathy makes beautiful films. Like, you should look at the, Paradigm Pictures, and Kathy Scott independently, I think, Pat is the producer as well. They're all award-winning people, and she really wanted it to be our voice and our story. The difficulty, she'll always say, is me. I was like the big prude. I was like, get out, If when we had the guys, we at the Q&As, Mark and John, they always said they would have happily had the filming continue with all those sessions. Like, seriously, especially Mark, Mark's like, no, you can stay. Film it all. I was like, you are not filming the rest of this session. So in fact, the sex worker was the biggest prude of the lot of us. And we did get to see a few cuts, and I didn't get editorial like, you should move this, you should do that. I have a really good thing though for continuity, so there was one point where they used the same image like back to front. I was like, you gotta watch that. but apart from that, I think they did an amazing job. I look at the work of editors and I think, oh my God, like over 100 hours of footage, how did you work out the storyline? And it turned out much better than what I could envisage, so I was really happy with it. Yeah. Informed consent is something that we deal with a lot within the workshops of Touching Base, and it's something that is definitely at the forefront of people's minds, especially when you're talking about acquired brain injuries or intellectual disability. And the first thing I have to say is that there is no sex worker in the world that will do something that is against someone's consent. It doesn't matter if Johnny's father has come in and said, here's so many dollars, he wants to have sex. I'm not just going to go, right, let's go. I'm going to do step by step by step. We're just not going to jump on someone and go for it. There's lots of ways of informed consent. Like, people get their knickers in a twist of like, oh, but they can't speak. It's like, yeah, they can. You just got to take the time to work out how they communicate. Everyone has ways, whether it's just blinking, it's about, like in the film, about, this is yes and that's no. Whether you can nod your head, whether you use a communication board, whether you have certain sounds. There's oodles of ways. And, even someone with, someone with acquired brain injury or someone on the autism spectrum, someone with intellectual disability, people are consenting all the time to the basics of, do you want to wear the blue shirt today or the red shirt? Do you want to go to the movies today? Okay, great. Do you want to tell me which film you want to watch today? Do you want me to call a cab for you now or later? Do you want dinner at 6 or 7 o'clock tonight? If you break it down to basic things, like, people are not just sitting there and allowing things to happen to them. They're consenting on many different levels, and providing sexual services of any nature, whether it's spooning with someone, whether you're undressing them in a sexual nature, whether you're washing them, whether you're actually having sex with them. There's a whole, there's just a handful of different things that that we can pursue with other human beings. They're always, working out how to consent. Yeah.
Any progress in the area with handicapped people in Montreal?
Is there any progress? I don't know if I quite understand the question. I can say that we do not have an organization like Touching Base in Montreal that brings together communities with disability and sex workers. For a gazillion, trillion reasons. I think Rachel and I have talked about this often, is that when you have a decriminalized industry, it allows people who are, this is a dangerous thing to say, when you have a decriminalized industry, it allows a context for where you can create and improve on your labor conditions. And so people are able to access your labor in different ways. So communities with disability, for whom, for the most part, sexuality is quite a stigmatized thing, are able to access the sex industry in ways that communities with disability in Montreal cannot. That's not to say that communities with disability do not access the sex industry in Montreal. It's just not done in such an open way and such a what seems like a lovely way.
Sanctionally.
Yeah.
I'd like to also stipulate that while we're talking obviously about sex workers and people with disability, that obviously people with disability around the world don't need to see sex workers. It's one option. I mean, there's millions and millions of people with disability around the world who are sexually active, loving partners and families and pursue lots of different options. But for us, it was about keeping it on the table as an option. And what this film, I found, has given people permission to do is to start talking about their rights, especially when there's a lot of gatekeepers sometimes within either the parental kind of family roles or the disability communities or the organisations. So people are too scared to even think about their own sexuality. So, you know, they may never get to the point of wanting or needing to get to see a sex worker. But this is often like one of the kind of icebreakers to say, well, I saw this film and, you know, have you thought about, you know, this, or, you know, are there, you know, even just simple things like vibrators. Some of them, they're not very good. If your dexterity is low, you know, you can't put a battery in, or you can't press the buttons. So it's about thinking about a whole range of things. So I'm hoping that people will start looking at people and allowing people to, giving them permission to be sexual human beings. So, and if they want, you know, in different ways, if they so choose, then one option could be a sex worker.
That's a great point to end to. I'd like to invite you all to give a big round of applause.